It is risky to live without something. That's a business capital. Whether for a startup or for properties you're trying to invest in, your lifestyle, your children's education, all of the things listed above are risky to have without a backup plan. Hello viewers, I am Latifat Ajao and you are welcome to Auto Expert Yoga to Safety. Do not touch that dial, we'll be right back.
Coming up this week on the program is Auto Guide, as auto engineer Andrew Ogulano enlightens us on car suspension, as well as auto expert with celebrity Big Shine as he shares his car experiences. Insurance today brought to you by Leadway Assurance Company Limited. Rounding off with Eternal PLC, makers of castor oil, and much more coming up on your screen right here on Auto Expert, your guide to safety. Stay tuned.
I want you to shake body. I want you to dance for me. Let's shoot for a while. I want you to want. I want to spend my money if you ain't got money. See your boy, an area higher, aka Big Shine. Keep watching Auto Expert, your guide to safety. Boom!
Welcome to Auto Guide on Auto Expert, the only automobile segment on television where we inform, educate, and enlighten you about the components that make up your vehicle. On the previous episode, Mr. Patrick, who is the host of Auto Watch, discussed about general car problems, oil specification for diesel engine. Still in the line of educating, we have Mr. Andrew Ogulano on today's episode as he talks about vehicle suspension and how to go about it.
I want to talk to you guys about the suspension of a vehicle. Most times, what you hear people say is that they have noise coming from their vehicle when they drive. Now, the thing about noise is that it's not only the shock absorbers that constitute the noises in cars. So today I'm just going to show you some other items on that suspension that might contribute to the noise that you hear in your car. So my advice would be, if you have noise, first take it to a certified workshop like ours and have us check it to make sure that whatever it is that is making that noise is evident before you go and change any of those parts that you need to change. All right, so I'm going to demonstrate a little bit with this Ford Explorer we have here. And the idea is I want to show you some of those other components that you obviously need to look at before you actually get them changed. Yeah, so let's start with this. Can you see? All right, so this is also popular shock absorbers that most people talk about. All right, so the shock absorber basically is there to absorb that impact that you feel whenever you go into uneven surface. But the shock absorber is not the only thing supporting the chassis of this car. So just to take a quick look, we have something called the stabilizer linkage, which is very popular, by the way. The stabilizer linkage, I'm not sure if you can see it, is this piece of metal here. It keys into the body of the shock absorber, and it also keys into something called the stabilizer rod. All right, so that stabilizer rod basically supports the stabilizer linkage, which supports the shock absorber. So in some cases, you might have an issue with your stabilizer linkage being the actual culprit for that noise, and you might think it's the shock absorber, right? Because it's actually there to support the shock absorber. So most of the time, this stabilizer linkage, which takes most of the impact, by the way, is what actually is affected as opposed to the shocks. Now, apart from the shocks, on this suspension, you have several other parts. Under here, you have what we call the lower control arm, right? So basically, it's a bushing here, right? It's another bushing here, and it's a ball joint here. And this arm basically supports this whole front side of this, right side of this vehicle. So if you have a tear in the bushing or a problem with the ball joint, which is here, it will make noise because then it's not able to hold the vehicle as a whole. So that being the case, that in itself also might constitute to the noise that you have. All right? You've got things like the tie rod. This tie rod basically comes out of your steering rack. All right? So you got an inner tie rod and you got an outer tie rod. So you guys know very properly what they call alignment. So this particular piece is used to do alignment. Whatever you're doing alignment on your car, basically you're adjusting how your tire sits in essence with the use of this tie rod. All right? So that's also a suspension part. So you got inner and outer tie rod. And if there's a fault with the outer or inner tie rod, you're also going to hear noise. You have also something called a stabilizer bar. Now this stabilizer bar goes all the way from one end to the other, and it has what you call a stabilizer bushing. You have your stabilizer bushing here, which fits into this case, and the stabilizer bar goes through it. All right? So essentially, once this stabilizer bushing gets weakened, then it doesn't grip that stabilizer rod as tightly as it should. And if it doesn't do that, after a while, there's some space. And when there's a gap, you also would feel noise on your suspension. So this is another piece of component that can cause noise in your suspension. You have a situation where people say they have noise on one side of their vehicle, but it's also always advisable to change things that you change on your suspension on both sides. All right, so if I have a bad shock absorber, I would change this shock absorber and I would change that shock absorber. It might mean that this shock absorber might be leaking right now and really bad, but if you think about it, they age the same way. Right? So as many bumps as you go into from this side, you might go into from that side. It's just like changing one pair of shoe and not changing the other. If you change one, you got one new shoe and then you got one old shoe. It doesn't really make much sense. So the same thing applies to vehicles. Whenever you change a suspension part, whatever part it is, you want to make sure you change on both sides.
Checking the vital parts of your car regularly helps. Having problems with your cars? Call the numbers showing on your screen. We will be at your service.
Did you know that using the wrong engine oil can actually knock your car engine? Are you in the habit of buying cheaper oils or neglecting manufacturer specifications? Did you know that all models of vehicles have different oil specifications? To know more about vehicle lubrication and lubricants, watch your best rated automobile and safety TV program Auto XPAT showing on digital and terrestrial TV. To get times and stations, follow us on Facebook at Auto Expert Pro, on Instagram at Official Auto XPAT, and on Twitter at Auto Expert Pro.
Thank you so much for watching today's episode of Auto Experts. And remember, it pays to insure because insurance works. See you next time.